Hey there, welcome back. It's Wendy from Worldwide Speak. This video is going to cover complex sentences. We're going to do a little review and then take a short quiz to check for your understanding. This video is geared towards the English language learner, but always open to any type of learner. And it's for those who are just beginning to start their writing journey in English. All right, are you ready? Let's learn. Okay, so what is a complex sentence again? A complex sentence is a sentence with one independent clause and at least one dependent clause. Let's review an independent clause. Well, an independent clause needs a subject, a verb, and it has to be a complete thought. And an independent clause can be a sentence on its own. So a sentence is an independent clause if there's a subject and a verb and it's a complete thought. Well, let's have an example of this. What about Mike ate pizza? There's the subject, Mike. There's the verb, ate. Ate what? He ate pizza, so it's a complete thought. Mike ate pizza. Let's talk a little bit about the dependent clause. What is a dependent clause again? Well, a dependent clause also has a subject and a verb, like the independent clause, but it's not a complete thought. It leaves you asking a question or wondering what else. It cannot be a sentence on its own. A dependent clause needs to hook onto an independent clause in order to be complete. Let's take an example. Let me show you an example of a dependent clause. Because he was hungry, it leaves me wondering what? I don't understand what you're trying to say in that sentence because it's not a complete thought. Well, what if we want to take this independent clause and this dependent clause and put them together in order to make a complex sentence? What would that look like? It would look like this. Mike ate pizza because he was hungry. You see, we have that independent clause. It could stand on its own. Mike ate pizza. And then we have the dependent clause. Because he was hungry. It hooks onto that independent clause and it gives us this nice, rich, complex sentence. Before we start the quiz, I just wanted to share with you some words that typically start a dependent clause. These are not all of the words that start a dependent clause, but here are some of them that you should be on the lookout for. As you get to the level where you're writing complex sentences, you'll become very familiar with these words. But it's important to recognize these so you know when there is a dependent clause. So let me give you an example with one of these words. Looks something like this. After it stopped raining. Well, I'm still confused by that clause there because it's a dependent clause. I see the word after, so I know it's going to be a dependent clause, and nothing comes after that, after it stopped raining, to let me know what happened. So this cannot stand alone. It's just a dependent clause because it still leaves you confused or thinking that there needs to be something else. Well, what if we hooked something onto that dependent clause to make a complex sentence? Something like this. After it stopped raining, I went for a run. So that's a nice complex sentence. You can see we start the sentence with a dependent clause. After it stopped raining, we know that word after signals dependent clause. And then notice there's a comma after the dependent clause before the independent clause. I went for a run. If we start the complex sentence with a dependent clause, we must use a comma before the independent clause. If we choose to start the sentence with the independent clause, I went for a run after it stopped raining, and the dependent clause comes next, we don't need a comma in the middle of a sentence. Let me repeat that. If you choose to start your complex sentence with a dependent clause, and you'll know it's dependent because you're using one of these special words that signal dependent clause, then you must use a comma after the dependent clause before the independent clause. If you choose to write a complex sentence where you begin the sentence with the independent clause and the dependent clause comes afterwards, and that those special words that start the dependent clause are in the middle of the sentence, you don't need a comma. Okay, let's take the complex sentence quiz. You're going to tell me if it's a complex sentence or not. Feel free to pause the video if you need more time to read each sentence. I'll probably move through them quickly, so it might help if you pause, take a look at the sentence, and then play when you're ready to hear the answer. All right, let's start with number 1. We went to the gym and we played basketball. Complex or not? It's not a complex sentence. It's long, and both of those clauses have subjects and verbs, but here we have a comma and a fanboy, so we know it's a compound sentence. Number 2. Before Jack ate dinner, he washed his hands. This is a complex sentence, and I see one of those special words, before, and I see that comma in the middle, so I know that dependent clause, comma, and then independent clause, because there's a subject, verb, complete thought, it's a complex sentence. Let's take a look at number 3. Lucia didn't eat her dinner because she felt sick. This one is a complex sentence as well. The independent clause starts the sentence. Lucia didn't eat her dinner. And remember, when we start with the independent clause, and then we have one of those special words that start the dependent clause, we don't need any punctuation. So I see the word because, and I know, oh, that's going to be a dependent clause. This is a complex sentence. Number 4. Yesterday, she decided to bake a cake. No, it's just a simple sentence. There's no words that are signaling dependent clause, and there's just one subject and one verb. Number 5. If Marta gets a raise, she will buy a new car. You're right. This is a complex sentence, and we begin with the dependent clause, and I know it's a dependent clause because it's starting with the word if, and then I see that comma after the dependent clause. Well done. Let's look at number 6. They watched a movie while their sister did her homework. This is a complex sentence. They watched a movie, independent clause, subject verb, and then I see that word while, and it shows me that it's going to begin a dependent clause. Their sister did, subject verb, her homework. So I have here a nice complex sentence. Let's take a look at number 7. Although she was tired, Elena stayed up late to finish her work. Well, yes, this is another complex sentence, and I've started with the dependent clause. And remember, I know it's dependent because I'm using that word although, and then I have the comma after the clause. And then I have an independent clause following the comma. Elena stayed up late. I have that subject and verb, complete thought, independent clause. And last, the team stretched after their practice. No, this is just a simple sentence, and I see that word after, and I think, oh, I bet it's a dependent clause. It's got to be complex, but it's not. It's being used in a different way because there's no subject and verb that comes directly after the word after. It's just a thing that comes afterwards. And so we know that this is just a simple sentence telling me the team stretched after what? After their practice. So it is not a complex sentence. All right, how did you do? I'm sure you did really well. Why don't you tell me about it and leave me some notes down below? And definitely, if you have any questions about these or complex sentences, please let me know those as well. I would love to help you. Thank you for taking the time to learn with us. Please remember to subscribe, and if you're a subscriber, turn on the notification bell. And for more resources, you can always visit our website at worldwidespeak.com. Until next time, thank you so much. Bye-bye.